This video is brought to you by Blinkist. The first 100 people to go to Blinkist.com/TopTenz will get to try it for 1 week for free, and you'll also get 25% off if you want the full membership. And let's get into today's video. What's worse than being stuck in a prison? Well, that's being in a prison hidden from the world, where the length of your sentence is just as hazy as your human rights. Many countries have such facilities for the prisoners they can't or won't process through their normal prison system, and as one might expect, these places are usually far from pleasant. And in the video today, we're looking at some of the most awful. Number 10. Salt Pit. Salt Pit was an infamous CIA black site in Afghanistan, and it featured all the terrifying amenities you may have heard described about such facilities. Loud music, prisoners left shackled with their hands above their heads for 22 hours a day, people being dragged through filthy corridors for beatings and interrogation under torture. The 64 people detained in Salt Pit were suspected high-level terrorist organization members, such as bodyguards for assorted warlords, including one Osama bin Laden. The site started its operations in 2002 when the post-9/11 war on terror was at its initial feeding frenzy. However, it soon became apparent that the site was taking more than a few liberties with things such as prisoners' rights and, for that matter, basic humanity. During the facility's very first year of operations, a detainee named Gul Rahman died when the staff beat him up and left him half naked and chained to a cold concrete floor. Rahman officially perished of hypothermia, though there were also numerous cuts and bruises all over his body. Meanwhile, the guy who gave the order to put him in shackles received a $2,500 award for great work. After 2 years of inhuman conditions, the public caught wind of Salt Pit. A Senate hearing discovered that the site was often manned by entirely unsupervised and untrained officers, which led to a culture of brutality and torture that even the CIA didn't know about. Number 9. China's black jails. It's hard to say anything specific about China's black jails because, despite human rights organizations insisting otherwise, the Chinese government itself is adamant that such detention centers don't exist. However, journalists and activists have reported visiting these facilities, either willingly or otherwise. A typical black jail is described as an empty government building full of civilians who are pretty clearly cops in plain clothes. Reports indicate that these sites exist largely to abduct petitioners. These are people who actively seek corrections to miscarriages of justice in their precincts. Once you're in one of these places, there's no telling how long you're going to stay there and what's going to happen. There might be psychological, physical, or even sexual abuse. You might be let go after a few days or have to bribe your way out after several months. One Swedish human rights activist living in Beijing says that in 2016 he was abducted in the middle of the night, taken to a black jail for interrogation, and held there for 23 days. He was thoroughly traumatized by the experience, which involved late-night marathon interrogation sessions and sleep deprivation torture. Number 8. UAE's secret prisons in Yemen. In 2011, the country of Yemen, which is one of the larger Arab states, experienced a series of revolts that ousted longtime President Ali Abdullah Saleh and sent the country spiraling into the Yemen conflict, which escalated into a war scenario where pretty much everyone keeps committing violations. Even before that, the country's infighting had failed to stay inside of its own borders and had spilled out onto Saudi Arabia's side. In 2015, a coalition led by Saudi Arabia staged an intervention and started liberating the area, which brings us to the subject of secret prisons. According to Amnesty International, in 2016, the United Arab Emirates built a large prison facility in the city of Aden and kept it so hush-hush that we only learned of it thanks to satellite images. Throughout 2016 and 2017, the prison kept growing, and hundreds of detainees were essentially disappeared from the world for months. This wasn't the only secret prison in Yemen either. Reports indicate that there is a whole network of such detention facilities run either by the UAE or local troops trained by them. Prisoners of such locations can expect a whole host of interesting torture methods, such as the infamous grill, where a victim is tied on a spit like a roast and spun in a circle of fire. Oh, and it also looks like the US was also around, lending a hand in the interrogation process. However, American officials say they have no idea about any human rights abuses in the facilities. Number 7. The LGBTQ prisons of Chechnya. In 2018, worrying reports started to surface about the treatment of LGBTQ citizens of the Chechnyan region of Russia. According to the St. Petersburg-based Russian LGBT network, the area has been hauling its sexual minorities off to secret prisons, where they have been subjected to an array of torture that has included forced starvation and electric shocks. What's worse, this isn't just some prejudiced group of gung-ho jailers doing it. The report indicates that the abuse was directed by the highest officials of Chechnya. Now, to be fair, these reports are coming from a decidedly Russian organization, and Russia is a country with an extremely dodgy history with both Chechnya, which, to be fair, is a part of Russia these days, and the LGBTQ community. Still, while it's tempting to believe that the powers that be might just be spreading misinformation to make a notoriously difficult region look bad, activists have continued to report associated LGBTQ purges in Chechnya as recently as 2019, so clearly there's something going on. And look, when a purge is a term on the table, secret prisons for the purgees aren't that far-fetched of an idea. Number 6. Ukraine's secret prison. Human rights organizations and alleged former detainees have long claimed that Ukraine's security service, SBU, used to operate a secret prison, but recently journalists have uncovered a whole bunch of evidence that may back this up. According to reports, the SBU had an official detention center in the city of Kyiv, but evidently they weren't all that fond of it, seeing as they operated another secret one in Kharkiv. It is said that the secret prison operated between 2014 and 2016 and seems to have been largely reserved for people who supported Russia, with whom Ukraine had been in conflict since 2014. Apart from the heavy allegations that this secret facility has existed, details of its actual operation are quite scarce. Some alleged former detainees say the prison operated under the guise of a hospital and that they were checked in to supposedly treat kidney disease, only to be checked in under a fake name, presumably to lose them in the process. The SBU, of course, denies all of this, but if there's any truth to the claims, such a facility would really be its own special level of hell. After all, just imagine the unpleasant experience of being rushed to the hospital only to discover that the place is actually a black site prison. So just before we continue today, I want to say a quick word about our sponsor, Blinkist. Look, it's not always easy to find the time to sit down and read all of the books you want. I know that. I'm a pretty busy dude myself, so I understand the problem with that, and I don't read nearly as much as I used to because I just got things to do. But good news, I have Blinkist, which is this app that you can download, and then basically it's got 15-minute summaries of the best non-fiction books that are out there. I'm just looking through my list here. I was reading Sapiens while I was on holiday and recapping it using Blinkist. I've also got Deep Work by Cal Newport on here, James Donovan's Shoot for the Moon, and of course the classic Stephen R. Covey or Covey, not sure, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you just click on that, you'll see that there are short, basic summaries of the book which cover its most important points. The cool thing as well is if you just tap this icon right here in the top right, it'll hopefully read this.
Number 1. For lasting change.
So there's a guy with a really nice voice who will read it to you. They call these blinks. It's a great way to kind of get the best from a book without having to read the whole thing or recap a book you've previously read. There are 8 million people currently using Blinkist to get the best insights, and well, like I said at the beginning, you can get a week for free at blinkist.com/TopTenz, and if you decide to continue, you'll get 25% off the full membership. So again, just go to blinkist.com/TopTenz, and let's get back to today's video. Number 5. Bossembele. Bossembele might not ring any bells to most people, let alone the country of the Central African Republic where it's located. It's a secret prison facility built by the old government in 2003 and used as more or less a personal prison by President Francois Bozize, who eventually was ousted a decade later. Bossembele was located adjacent to a strong military camp, and the prison was part of a facility colloquially known as Guantanamo. It housed both common criminals and political prisoners, and its conditions made its infamous namesake look like Mar-a-Lago. One prisoner spent his 17 months inside Bossembele, sleeping on a bit of cardboard if he was lucky. If he wasn't, his bed was the ground. He didn't get to wash for 7 months, and that's not the only struggle he had with water. The liquid was so scarce that prisoners sometimes had to get by on a cup of water per day. All along, Bozize's soldiers ruled the place as they liked, handing beatings, torture, and even killings to whoever they deemed unworthy. Number 4. Ain Aouda in Morocco. To be fair, the facilities near the city of Ain Aouda probably weren't any more or less brutal than the 50 or so CIA black sites listed in the report the Obama administration commissioned after taking over from the Bush one. But since it's located in Morocco, which the report specifically mentions as a key cooperator country in the CIA's assortment of secret detention and relocation programs, it'll have to act as a bit of an example here. The 2 detention locations near Ain Aouda hosted a number of non-Moroccan prisoners who were subject to either on-location torture or removed to other facilities that presumably went on to provide said torture. Although the total number of black site prisoners that have gone through Morocco's secret prisons is estimated to be just 13, which of course is precisely 13 too many, the country's authorities have reportedly been extremely keen keen to stomp on any public knowledge of their involvement in human rights violations, and as a result, they have been pretty hard on human rights organizations, specifically Amnesty International. That approach really doesn't seem like it'll convince anyone of the country's good intentions, but, well, there you go. Number 3. Mihail Kogalniceanu Air Base. Very few countries are willing to step up and say, yeah, we totally ran a CIA black site back in the day. Romania is no exception. But their argument is somewhat watered down by the fact that the country's own airport officials have come up to discuss some of the strange things they've seen at the heavily guarded Mihail Kogalniceanu airfield. According to officers who served at the airbase, the facility had one particularly secluded corner that often seemed to show surprising activity at 1 a.m. Between 2004 and 2005, this was the time of day when snipers would suddenly appear on rooftops, black minivans would materialize, and large strange packages that looked an awful lot like human beings were being moved around. Romania's involvement in black site activity was revealed in a report by Dick Marty, an operative for the European Union's human rights arm, Council of Europe. Marty says that the prisoners were shackled, isolated, and nude in utter disregard of the continent's Convention of Human Rights. Former Romanian security big shot Ioan Tepels has also confirmed the existence of a secret prison facility at the airbase, quoting extremely confidential arrangements that gave the CIA free rein to use their corner of the airbase how they wished, with the Romanians agreeing to secure the perimeter and steering clear of whatever was going on inside. Number 2. North Korea's secret prison camp system. Look, North Korea absolutely doesn't have a secret prison system. They've told us as much, and has there ever been any reason to suspect they're not being completely upfront about their operations? You know, apart from all those many years of reports trickling out of the country that reveal the brutal truth. According to interviews with around 60 defectors who have escaped the secret prison camps North Korea totally doesn't have, there are up to 200,000 people imprisoned in them, and such facilities are so common that they have a name, Kwan Li So. Hidden deep in the mountainous regions of the country, these camps house detainees who are guilty of the crimes of wrongdoing, wrong thinking, wrong knowledge, wrong association, or wrong class background, aka things the average Westerner does on a normal Saturday night. Trials are treated as an optional extra, and sentences can be so long that they're hereditary. If you commit a wrong whatever crime, your children and even your grandchildren might also have to spend their lives at a camp, fighting every day to get enough food to survive and be subject to whatever tortures, forced labor, and executions that the guards feel unleashing on that day. Number 1. India's Papa 2. In the 1990s, Indian military and local guerrillas clashed in the Kashmir region of the country, and the soldiers' methods of finding the enemy could get pretty brutal. The ID parade involved rounding up the boys and men of an area and showing them one by one to masked informers. Whoever the informer pointed out was taken away, and they were taken to an interrogation center where they could be tortured or killed without much delay. If they were really unlucky, though, they were taken to the Papa 2 prison camp, which was a place you'd really want to walk away from. A 19-year-old Muslim student named Masroof Sultan is one of the lucky, and presumably rather few people, to survive Papa 2, and his account of the place is harrowing to say the least. After he was picked out in an ID parade for reasons he did not know, though he suspects it may simply be because one of the soldiers wanted to have his fancy jumper, he was beaten up, blindfolded, and taken away for interrogation. Despite his insistence that he was innocent, Sultan was stripped naked and beaten up so badly that several of his bones broke. After that, they took the poor, nude, broken young man and threw him in a cell of the infamous Papa 2, which was on an old estate of a local ruler. Sultan's time in Papa 2 was short, but that didn't make it any less painful. The guards threw cold water at him, attached metal rings on his genitals and both feet, and administered electric shocks. Finally, he was taken away to a nearby flood channel where a group of soldiers shot him several times. Miraculously, he survived, but he was paralyzed for the rest of his life. Oh, and if you think we're done, it gets worse. Masroof Sultan was far from the only victim of Papa 2. Though the soldiers of India's border security force used the facility to interrogate and murder thousands of people, it was actually just one of 7 similar centers in the region. So I'm not going to ask if you enjoyed that video, but I do hope you found it interesting and maybe a little bit enlightening. If you did, please do hit that like button below and do subscribe. And when you're subscribing, hit the bell so you know when we put out a new video. Also, if you enjoyed today's video, I think you'll enjoy my other channel called Geographics. It's a new project I'm working on. Geography content. Obviously, it's linked to below. Please check it out if you feel like it. And thank you for watching.